Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all bundled up because today I'm sharing 3 bone-chilling tales that will send shivers down your spine. As mentioned, the long, dark winter nights tend to breed frightening and peculiar events. The isolation leaves much room for the imagination to wander. If you are scared easily, you may want to cover your eyes for this one. Our first story comes from a woman named Lindsay, who had a strange encounter one frozen December night back in 2019. Now, usually the sound of Christmas carols fills people with warmth and nostalgia. But in this case, the melody drifting across the remote snowy woods did nothing but terrify. The Christmas Caroller. The year was 2019. December had just begun, and so Lindsay and her 2 roommates, Jess and Amy, were bustling with excitement, making preparations for the holidays ahead. The trio of lifelong friends had decided to rent a cozy cabin located deep in the snow-cloaked woods of northern Maine for their first Christmas out of college. Surrounded by tall, barren trees and untouched powder, the isolated cabin was scenic, albeit a little unnerving given its seclusion. But the girls adored the rustic vibe and privacy it afforded. With no neighbors for miles, they looked forward to spending QT without disturbances from the outside world. In keeping with tradition, on December 1st, they spent an entire sunny Saturday decorating every inch of the cabin's exterior with strings of glimmering lights, giant glittering ornaments, and an 8-foot-tall Frosty the Snowman prominently displayed on the front lawn. Stepping back to admire their handiwork with the quaint snow-covered cabin now magically transformed, they felt that enchanting Christmas spirit swirling in the freezing air. Over the next 2 weeks, the trio reveled in holiday activities like baking cookies, watching Hallmark movies by the fire, and driving to town to do some gift shopping. But mostly they cherished having downtime to simply lounge around talking and joking for hours on end, without a care in the world. All was merry and bright. Until one bizarre and frightening night changed the tone of their usually pleasant stay. It all began on a Thursday evening in mid-December. Lindsay was home alone, carefully gift-wrapping presents in the cozy living room, when something peculiar caught her attention. Above the sound of holiday tunes jingling on the radio, she thought she detected a faint melody drifting in from outside. Pausing to listen closely, the song was unmistakable but rather unexpected given the remote location. Someone appeared to be singing Jingle Bells and was already partway through the chorus. Lindsay set down her scissors and tape. Who could be strolling around their isolated cabin in the middle of the woods at night belting cheerful Christmas carols? The nearest neighbor was at least 3 miles away. Uneasy, Lindsay crept over to the frosted glass window and peered out into the darkness. But all she could see was dense forest and steadily falling snow fading to blackness. She stared intently, trying to spot the peculiar caroler, but to no avail. The singing stopped abruptly. Lindsay held her breath, listening for any sound at all other than the whistling winter wind. Complete silence. After a few minutes standing frozen in suspense, she exhaled deeply, trying to rationalize the peculiar incident. Surely just her mind playing tricks on her, she reasoned. She turned the music back on and returned to gift wrapping, immersing herself in neatly lining up the creases on a rainbow-striped sheet of wrapping paper decorated with elves and Christmas trees. But then, the faint strains of Jingle Bells began anew, penetrating the glass once again from some unseen spot off in the darkness. This time, the unidentified caroler sounded much nearer to the cabin. They seemed to be standing dangerously close to her window now, their voice no longer muted by distance or trees. A chill ran down Lindsay's spine, despite the warmth pouring from the fireplace across the room. Lindsay's heart pounded in her ears. She flew to the front door, throwing the lock and deadbolt into place. The eerie singing continued outside. In a panic, she darted from room to room, drawing all the window blinds tightly shut. She peered out briefly between the slats and thought she spotted a dark figure lurking by the trees at the forest edge. Finally, sealing off all possible entry points, Lindsay grabbed a kitchen knife and hid trembling under a blanket on her bed, willing herself not to make a sound until Jess and Amy returned home. The caroling ceased moments later, leaving only silence once again. Needless to say, the girls promptly moved out the next morning, Christmas spirit all but vanished. The abandoned mall Santa. 14-year-olds Tim and Jaden, best friends since childhood, lived in a small Midwestern town thrown into months of eager anticipation when developers broke ground on a massive upscale shopping mall just outside city limits, set to open right after Thanksgiving. For years, residents had driven nearly an hour to access decent shops. Having luxurious retail within walking distance seemed a dream come true. The people watched raptly as construction progressed on their glittering new hub. The grand opening was so close they could taste it. However, in early December, just 2 weeks before Christmas, work abruptly ceased. Developers had secretly gone bankrupt, losing funding to finish. The unfinished skeleton of a mall loomed half complete, raw construction materials exposed, much to everyone's immense disappointment. Now it stood deserted. Chain-link fences locked tight around the property displayed yellow warning signs. The town's anticipation soured to outrage bordering despair. Their hopes for a gathering spot during the cold, barren winter had been dashed in such cruel fashion. Still, from a teen's perspective, the abandoned site held an irresistible air of adventure, never ones to shy from mischief one frigid December night. Tim and Jaden easily slipped through the fences to explore the vacant shell, foreboding in the darkness. They felt like characters in an apocalypse film wandering the creepy skeleton of an aborted mall. Eventually locating the main concourse, a fully built Santa's Village holiday display inexplicably stood completed, a cozy red armchair and wrapped gifts atop glittery fake snow near trees and lampposts. Amused, Tim plopped down onto Santa's lap while Jaden laughed, snapping pics with his phone. But their antics were cut short by a blood-curdling screech. Whipping around, they spotted an elderly security guard waving a flashlight. The duo fled into the darkness, leaving dreams of a vibrant new shopping hub even further behind in the dust. Later, while scrolling through Jaden's pics, Tim's stomach dropped. There, in the last Santa photo, a decaying hand lurked just over Tim's shoulder. The abandoned mall almost seemed to resent those who still clung to hope. The boys never returned, having learned that sometimes ghosts of the past should remain undisturbed. The icy voice. Riviera eagerly embarked on the long drive to her family's remote lakeside Wisconsin cabin, excited to reunite for annual New Year's festivities. Upon arrival, she soaked in the rustic nostalgia before a fierce blizzard swiftly blew in. Thankfully, her parents and brothers were already hunkered down fireside. They spent that evening immersed in jovial conversation until around 1 a.m., when blood-curdling cries cut through the whipping winds. A young girl begging desperately for help from the darkened frozen lake. Confused and terrified, the family rushed to peer outside, but an impenetrable wall of swirling snow obscured their vision. With phones dead, they had no way to call 911. Helpless, they agonized over the faint wails, growing weaker by the minute, until the girl's voice trailed ominously into silence. At daybreak, Rivera's father and brothers swiftly geared up to comb the ice for clues. Meanwhile, she and her mother awaited news nervously. Hours later, her brother Gabe returned alone, looking grim. Bizarrely, he stated there were 0 footprints marring the pristine ice and snow except their own from earlier. Stunned, Rivera felt goosebumps crawling down her spine as an unsettling theory emerged. What if a ghostly spirit far beneath the frozen waters had cried out instead? Unease permeated the cabin walls after that, replaced formerly treasured memories. The disturbing incident prompted her rattled family to promptly cut their annual winter trip short. Loading up the next morning, Rivera took one last sweeping glance at the glittering frozen abyss that had tormented them the night before. She shuddered involuntarily before turning away, hoping to outrun the lake's unseen forces stirred by winter's darkness. Years later, fuzzy memories resurfaced unexpectedly as Riviera led her husband and young daughter up the winding driveway toward the familiar lodge, now theirs, having inherited it. Hesitating briefly, she pushed open the creaking front door. A fire already roared at the hearth built from the original stone. Smiling faces surrounded her, excited for new beginnings. She took a deep breath and stepped into the warmth, choosing to embrace this sanctuary and build new traditions to outweigh the old hauntings. As we wrap up, I want to note that while the isolation and stillness of the season sets an eerie stage for frightening things, it also creates a wonderful time for families and friends to bond over hot chocolate, cozy fires, and beautiful holiday lights. At the end of the day, our connections with others are what help get us through dark times, both literal and figurative. On that wholesome note, Let me know in the comments below which bone-chilling story was your favorite. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss next week's disturbing true tales. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday season, no matter what you celebrate. But maybe keep the blinds closed and the doors locked, just in case. Thanks for watching, and stay warm.